Hello, my name is Jennifer Houts. I'm one of the counselors with the Ascension Employee Assistance Program, and I'm pleased to present to you today a little topic on food as medicine. One of the functions of the Employee Assistance Program is to come out to the companies that we serve and to provide training, such as a lunch and learn on various topics like we're doing today. Sometimes we also discuss mental health issues, stress management, parenting, things like that that you might be interested in addition to offering confidential professional counseling to employees and their families. If those are things that you might be interested in, please contact your EAP or talk to your HR representative, and they will help you to get connected with those services. So today we're going to talk a little bit about food as medicine. Maybe that's not something that we think about all the time, but truly anything that we put in our body obviously has an opportunity to be healing or restorative. Uh, Obviously, it also has an opportunity to have a negative effect. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of those today. I'd like you to reflect just a little bit, maybe on some times where you have eaten certain things and how your body feels or your mental clarity, how you feel after you eat. And then other times when maybe you eat something different, if you have any other experiences. Most of us can say that, yeah, definitely we can tell if we've been eating a more healthy, balanced diet versus if we've been eating out too much or choosing the wrong things or eating heavy food that makes us feel kind of sluggish. So, we're going to review some of that today. Our hopes is that we can just review what is a healthy diet. I'm assuming that all of you have heard this at some point, but it's nice to brush up and refresh and also to encourage you that even making some small changes can really make a huge difference. So, what do you think? Do you think we as Americans are having a little problem with what we eat? Yeah, that's kind of a silly question. Um, as you see in this slide, actually, over the past several years, Americans have been getting heavier and heavier. And according to the CDC's guidelines for healthy weights, um, we continue to get heavier. And the rate of obesity just in the United States in some areas is over 35% of the population. And you can see that the central part of the United States, particularly, seems to fall into that category. The World Health Organization reminds us that any imbalance that we have where we are not moving enough and we're taking in too much calories means that we're probably going to be overweight. So, like we've all heard before, we got to move more, eat less. But why? Why do we have to do that? It's not as fun. um, well, just a quick reminder of all the things that might be a higher risk for us in association with being overweight. One of the biggest ones being diabetes. The incidence of diabetes, particularly in the United States, has skyrocketed. And we know that particularly type 2 diabetes is very closely linked with being overweight. It also subsequently increases our likelihood that then we'll have higher risk for heart disease, kidney disease, stroke, and infection. We also know that being overweight is just hard on our heart. It's that much more weight that we have to move around. It's that much more blood that our heart needs to pump. So we know that the risk of heart disease and stroke is higher of those of us who do not get good physical activity or are not in a good weight range. We also know that the incidence of cancer is higher among persons who are obese. It's also higher among people who do not eat a healthy, balanced diet, which also, often goes hand in hand. We also know that intake of some not healthy things, fried foods, alcohol, some other toxic type things, also increase our likelihood of cancers. We know that obesity is related to difficulties with the strength of our bones, the likelihood of fractures, um, the likelihood of developing osteoporosis, particularly in our older ages. And we know that just having a healthy diet and physical activity is really the key for us to live a longer life, but also not just the quantity of years, but the quality of years. So hopefully, we're not having as much pain, we're not having as much inflammation. We're able to enjoy and do the activities that we want to and have the stamina and the health to enjoy that. So, the recommendations from the World Health Organization are that we should be eating less of high calorie foods and be more physically active and pick our fruits and our veggies. And that the more healthy we are on a regular basis, the greater the likelihood that we will be able to maintain that healthiness. So, probably this is nothing that you haven't heard before. Like I mentioned, this is a review. And it's not to overwhelm us and think, oh my gosh, there's just so much here. I don't think I can do all this. I don't know if you can see my sign back here. It says start where you are. I think that's one of the biggest messages throughout this whole training is that even by making one small change, we can really impact a huge part of our well being. So let's review a little bit about healthy eating. So we've come through several iterations of sort of what have been recommendations for healthy eating. Many of you might remember back to the 90s when we were doing everything low fat and high carb, eating lots of bread and pasta, but thinking that anything that was butter or animal fats was bad for us. Unfortunately, the idea of fat making us fat didn't necessarily work. In fact, we figured out that lots of carbs also make us fat. Since then, there's been some modifications. In 2011, they went to what they call My Plate, which is a little bit closer to what they recommend now in terms of portion control and divvying up our plate like a clock. However, there's some controversies associated with this because definitely food producers, manufacturers, and advertising had a little bit of a sway on some of what got into this. And so this is probably the most updated one, the healthy eating plate that has been created by experts at Harvard. This actually was done without the sway of various marketing and different lobbyists. And there have been some tweaks. You'll notice that they talk about healthy oils, also that grains shifted from just grains like white bread to whole grains, which is very different. Also, you're going to notice that it says water instead of dairy. And those of us in the dairy state have a really hard time sometimes accepting that. But to recognize that humans are the only animal that continue to have dairy products into our adulthood. So after breastfeeding, most other animals do not have any fruits or don't have any milk, and other countries don't have any other dairy products or milk, particularly in the liquid form after childhood. So we're unusual in that. And we're certainly not here to diss on the dairy industry. We all love a good glass of milk. We love our cheese. We love our yogurts. It's just to recognize that too much of it can be a problem, and particularly for some people. We've definitely seen an increase in lactose intolerance and allergies associated with dairy. So, what is healthy eating? Uh, Perhaps in a training you've heard about mindfulness, and if not, that's something EAP could help you with. Mindfulness is being present and paying attention to what it is that we're putting in our mouth, or really anything that we're doing right here in the moment, and consciously making good choices so that we think of our body as a machine and a living organism that needs energy. And the better the energy and input that we put in, obviously, the better the output that we have. You might have heard of the acronym HALT, HALT, which is a good reminder to us before we put something in our mouth. The H stands for hungry. So question yourself, are you really hungry? A is for anxious or stressed. Are you really just um, feeling keyed up and eating is something to do with your hands and something to do with your mouth to get your mind off of it? L, are you lonely or sad? Sometimes food makes us feel really good, like a big warm hug, but that's not always what our body needs. Sometimes we just really need to connect with someone else rather than to eat another piece of cake. And T, are you tired or are you bored? Sometimes our body just needs rest. And sometimes we just need to go do something and keep ourselves busy rather than mindlessly putting things in our mouth. So, good nutrition equals good health. So, for eating a balanced diet of clean, organic foods, it will fulfill most of our nutritional needs. But realize that even one area of deficiency can cause imbalance in multiple systems for us. Perhaps your grandma has said that maybe you should just have some chicken noodle soup or some old fashioned vegetable soup. There is lots of reason to believe that just eating a good mix of healthy quality foods is really all that we need. And kind of everything that was old is new again. So, getting back to the more basic types of foods that we can grow in our garden, probably a lot better idea for us. Just a little review on vitamins and nutrients. So, we know that vitamins are really important to us, but sometimes we forget all that they do for us. They definitely repair damage in our cells. They improve our immunity, so our defense against getting sick. They help with day to day function. And if we are in an environment where there's lots of stress or lots of toxins, or if our body environment is consistently not getting the support or the energy it needs, it's going to be pulling from those vitamins even more to try to compensate. Just one example is neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers within our brain that relay information. So when I decide that I want to lift up my hand, my neurotransmitters are communicating that within my brain, down my arm, into my hand to lift it. Neurotransmitters also have a huge piece in regulating our mood, food cravings, addiction, energy, libido, sleep, attention, memory, and pain, and I could go on, but I think I've proven my point that neurotransmitters are pretty much involved in everything. And our vitamins and minerals that we take in are so important, and fat, for the conduction of these neurochemical messages. And without them, our body is out of balance. Particularly, we know that food is associated with mood, emotional health, and it can play a huge role in us feeling like we can manage our day to day stressors, that we feel emotionally in control, that we feel generally happy and content. Whereas if we're having deficiencies and not getting the vitamins that we need, we may be struggling with anxiety, we may be struggling with depression or other issues. We know that keeping those vitamins and minerals coming is what helps us to be chemically balanced. Thing is, they have to be ingested every day. They're considered to be water soluble, which means that every day we need to have them. They're not going to build up in our system. So, vitamins and minerals are found naturally, you guessed it, in fruits and veggies, lean proteins, and the whole grains. So, fruits and veggies keep us alive. Always remember to eat your five. Might know Daniel Tiger from children's programming. He has a lot of good messages for us. This is just one good reminder. Little review on vitamins. So, B vitamins are something that we take for granted until we don't have them. Symptoms start showing up like fatigue, weakness, constipation, low energy, low appetite, balance issues, difficulty concentrating, memory problems, the several things. And this is when we recognize, oh, maybe there is a deficiency in our B vitamins. These are some of the foods that can really increase our level of B vitamin that we should be intaking on a regular basis. Also, the C vitamins. They are a natural antioxidant that help us and they keep our immune system working properly. A lot of times we think about, oh, vitamin C, oranges. Yes, oranges are great. And that's certainly one that we think of. But did you know that vitamin C also occurs naturally in leafy green vegetables like kale and cabbage and Brussels sprouts? It's also in other citrus and other fruits that you can enjoy. Magnesium is another one. In fact, it's considered a miracle mineral because it's so crucial to the body's function. And again, we notice that we might be low on magnesium if we have symptoms of headaches, difficulty with mood swings associated with menstrual cycles, depression and anxiety, particularly pain and inflammation. Muscle fatigue and weakness, high blood pressure could also be associated. So, trying to get those magnesium rich foods, particularly in our nuts, whole grains, and higher fat vegetables like avocados and almonds. One supplement that you might consider is ashwagandha. It's been used for over 3,000 years to alleviate stress and increase overall well being. It's best known for its ability to help lower cortisol, which is our stress hormone. But it has many health benefits that you might want to look into. But you always want to check with your doctor before you start any supplement. The best way to get nutrients is to eat a varied, healthy diet. And most people can get enough through the foods we eat. But sometimes a supplement is helpful. We need to check out the foods that we're eating. So, first of all, sometimes the foods that we're getting are not as healthy as they were historically, either from over farmed fields or high levels of pesticides or fertilizers, or from GMOs, which are genetically modified foods. You might have seen in the grocery store that apples, for example, some of them are huge and they look beautiful and they last on the shelf a lot longer. However, they've been genetically modified to be that big and that unblemished and to last that much longer in your grocery store. So we just need to check out, what is it that we're eating and what is the quality of the food that we're eating. Just a reminder of caution that if you are taking any over the counter supplements um, or a remedy, they are still medicine. And you should be talking to your doctor first before you would start taking them, or at minimum, make sure you list them when your doctor says, "Hey, what medications are you taking now?" Often we forget to put on those things that are extra or over the counter that might not have been prescribed by a medical provider. Make sure you include those in there and discuss them with your doctor. So, what do we do to improve our diet? I mentioned before, we just have to start where we are. If you have gotten away from healthy eating habits, if you're not eating a good balanced regular diet of vitamins and minerals, you're probably not going to change it all in one day. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't start. So I recommend to you that you would eat a rainbow, which sounds really lovely, but it's an easy way to think about eating healthy, colorful foods. Okay, so caveat, that does not mean that we're eating bomb pops or nacho Doritos or Skittles, even though they are very beautiful and colorful and visually appealing. That's not exactly what we're talking about. So think about some green foods that you can eat. How about some orange, some lovely reds, some purples and blues, some white and tan. You can challenge yourself. Try to add in those colors. Try to have a very colorful, visually appealing plate. Did you know we eat with our eyes first? So if you have a colorful array on your plate, it's going to be a lot more likely and enjoyable for you to engage in some healthier eating. You can challenge yourself to try to eat a new vegetable every week. You can try to have at least one day where you eat all fresh veggies and fruits. Maybe have a meatless Monday, for example, and try to add in new things that you haven't eaten before. Perhaps your community has a CSA, which is a shared agricultural group that will have a farm stand that might be close by you, or often they will also deliver to your neighborhood. It's a great way to try out several different fruits and veggies that maybe you wouldn't necessarily. They often include great vegetables. You can always go online and find great new things that you can try. Explore it, make it a fun adventure with your family so kids can get involved too. We also need to look out for poisons. Remember water. Going back to think about yourself as a living organism and a machine. So you need to be hydrated and you need to have healthy, clear water to hydrate yourself. Be careful if you are over indulging in caffeine, artificial sweetened drinks, fruit juices, even, and soda, alcohol, anything other than water. It's okay to have some of those things in moderation, but remember that the healthiest option you can have for your body is water. And one thing that you might try is if you really like to drink soda, have a soda, but before you have another soda, you have a big glass of water. Or before you have another beer, you have a big glass of water in between. Also, to look about some of the choices that you're making, not only in the foods that you choose in terms of nutrient value, but also how they're prepared. So, for example, I bet we can all think of some really yummy stuff that we like that's probably not too good for us. The things that come to my mind are fried foods, which probably was a great little potato or mushroom to start with, but now we cooked it in a whole lot of grease and fried that sucker up and it tastes a whole lot better, but it's not so good for us. Processed meats, packaged sweets, like, ho-hos and Twinkies and fun stuff like that, and alcohol, particularly here in Wisconsin. Excessive use of alcohol that is leading to some health conditions for a lot of people. Also, look out for anything else that might be high in trans fats, anything that is high in sugar, and things that might be kept in plastics or other containers that may or may not be too healthy for us. So look out for toxic exposures in alcohol, meds, electromagnetic fields, packaging, personal care products, pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, smoking, and stress. So here's just a few things I mentioned before on GMOs. If you want to look up, it's very easy to find some recommendations of some of the most modified foods, as well as some of the highest pesticide coated foods that you might find in the grocery store. So not everyone can go out and just start eating organic or clean foods, but you can start to pick from the healthier ones. You can also make sure to thoroughly wash your vegetables and fruits to try to remove some of the pesticides and insecticides. So this whole thing was not meant to scare you, and it certainly wasn't meant to overwhelm. Um, a balanced diet is going to have a little bit of everything. So it's okay to have birthday cake. It's okay to have a beer once in a while, and certainly a brat because you live in Wisconsin. Um, but it's to think about your overall, how often are you getting in the rainbow on your plate? Can you increase the likelihood of that? Can you increase the number of times that you go out and take a walk on purpose rather than sitting mindlessly in front of the TV and putting something in your mouth that you probably weren't really hungry for anyway? So we want to reduce that toxicity and increase the level of nutrients on a regular basis. So just a quick little recap. Start to think of food as medicine. Again, think of your body as a machine, think of your body as a living organism. And it needs fuel and it needs the best quality fuel that you can put in there so that we have the best output emotionally and physically. So think about that when you're making choices to be more mindful of eating a colorful diet. Also, to be talking with your doctor if you think supplements might be a good idea for you. And to try to add in water over any other drink, or at least to alternate, like I said, so that we increase the likelihood of that. And this was just a tip of the iceberg, pun intended. There's lots of things that we can do to modify our diet to improve our health. And you might consider talking to a homeopathic doctor, to someone in chiropractic care, or a different consultant that might be at a vitamin or whole food store that you could talk to, and to your primary care doctor to see how can you increase your health in a more natural approach. Think about some of those problem areas that you have, and maybe is there a natural way that you could address that rather than another medication? And certainly rather than to continue to struggle or to suffer. So I hope today that you were given a few reminders of some good, healthy lifestyle practices, and that you can think of at least a couple of things that you can do to make some small changes and then snowballing into some even bigger changes to improve your mental and physical health. I hope you enjoyed this short learning session. If there's other topics that you'd really like to see, please let your EAP or HR folks know. We'd be happy to provide that for you. Our whole goal is to increase the health and well being of our employees. Thank you and have a good day.